Welcome to my channel. Hi everybody, welcome back. And I'm ready to get right into the next part of the Jean Harlow story, which will be part 4. And if you recall, we left off last time when Paul Byrne, Jean Harlow's newlywed husband, was found murdered in the Harlow Byrne mansion. And so what happened was I explained that the studio arranged for Jean Harlow to marry someone else and then later divorce very quietly. I don't understand that, but that's what they did. And so we're moving forward from the next part on, which would be taking us to 1933. And so by that year, MGM, or rather Louis B. Mayer, finally realized the true value of the Harlow Gable team, and also of Jean herself. She was really coming around. She was coming along. And so after Red Dust, they then again paired off with a movie called Hold Your Man, which was produced in 1933. And so that was another box office success. And so in the same year, she played the naughty wife of Wallace Beery, the other actor, in the all-star comedy drama, which is called Dinner at 8. And she played a pressured Hollywood film star in the comedy Bombshell with Lee Tracy and Franchot Tone. So that film, Bombshell, was based on Jean's own life, or that of a 1920s it girl, Clara Bow. Now, as you know, Clara Bow, or as you may not know, I'm not sure, Clara Bow was the it girl for the silent films. But because the silent films were now a bygone era, guess who was going to be the new it girl? Jean Harlow, and she indeed was quite the bombshell in the 30s. And so the following year, which would be 1934, she teamed up with Lionel Barrymore and Franchot Tone again in The Girl from Missouri, 1934. That's The Girl from Missouri. And so the film was the studio's attempt to again soften Jean's image. And so, but in that attempt suffered from censorship problems so much that its original title, Born to be Kissed, had to be changed. And so that's when it became The Girl from Missouri. And so after the hit Hold Your Man, MGM cast Jean and Gable in two more successful films. And so one of those was China Seas, which came out in 1935 with Wallace Beery and Rosalind Russell. And then Wife versus Secretary, which they debuted in 1936 with Myrna Loy and James Stewart. He's another one of my favorites. And so this is funny, a bit funny. James Stewart was speaking of a scene in which he was smooching or kissing Jean Harlow in the car. And so that was the movie Wife versus Secretary. And so he said that the director didn't like the way this scene was being done. So they had to keep doing it over and over again. And as you know, James Stewart, James Stewart, I even have problems with that. He kept screwing up deliberately because he liked doing it. He liked to repeat the scene over and over and over. And so he kept botching it up. And so he did claim that Jean was a very good kisser. And so I thought that was funny. Of course, this was years before James Stewart was ever even married. So that's off the record. Anyway, Jean was consistently voted one of the strongest box office draws in USA from 1933 on. So it took her a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, that she did finally manage to gain and acclaim that success that she was after. And so she often outranked the other female colleagues at MGM, such as Greta Garbo. And so by the mid-30s, she was one of the biggest stars in America. And it was hoped that she would also be MGM's next huge star. And so still very young, her stardom continued to rise, while the popularity of other female stars, such as Crawford and Norma Shearer, kind of tapered off a bit. And so Jean Harlow's movies continued to make huge and incredible profits at the box office, even during the middle of the Depression, which would have been right then and there. So yes, those were the years of the Depression. And so after her third marriage ended in 1934, that would have been the arranged marriage, Jean met William Powell, another MGM star, and just like that, she fell right in love with him. And so the couple were reportedly engaged for 2 years, but they had differences regarding past marriages and uncertainty as to the future. It may be other things as well we don't know about that never went public. And so it kept them from making their relationship public and official. And so the two co-starred in the next film, which was entitled Reckless, and it debuted in 1935, and it was her first musical. And so her voice was dubbed, and with that of the skilled vocalist Virginia Verrill. And Marilyn Monroe, her singing was not dubbed. I liked her singing, and so of course I don't know what Jean's singing was like because I've never heard it. So Susie was another movie that came out in 1936 in which she played the title role, the starring role, and it gave her top billing over her other four co-stars, Franchot Tone and Cary Grant. And so, not the four stars, but the four-time co-stars. So while critics noted that Jean did dominate the film, it was a reasonable box office success. So it was good. It was good in more terms than just her being sensational. You know what I mean? It was a good movie. So Jean then starred in a movie called Riff Raff, which came out in 1936. And it was a financial disappointment with Spencer Tracy and Una Merkel. And I've never heard of her. So, and afterwards, the release of a really big hit called Libeled Lady, 1936, was very successful. And she was top billed over William Powell, Myrna Loy, and Spencer Tracy. So she did bring very good reviews for her comedic performance, her comedy. And so during the filming, Jean was involved with William Powell, while Spencer was having an affair with Myrna. I don't like that too much, but it kept them happy. I guess when you're acting in a movie, you can't help but feel that chemistry and often act on it. So it's just unfortunate that that went on so much. Anyway, so Jean then went on to film W.S. Van Dyke's comedy Personal Property, which came out in 1937. And that one co-starred Robert Taylor. Wow. And so it was Jean Harlow's final complete motion picture appearance. And so it really came to an end very quickly because soon after she fell ill. So in January of 1937, Jean and Taylor traveled to Washington to fundraise for the elections, and it was actually associated with the president's birthday. And so, they actually, Jean had earlier campaigned for other political figures in 1934 and 1936. And so Jean was a Democrat, and she had gone on a trip that was very physically taxing for her. So I think this trip to Washington is where her symptoms began to worsen. And so she did come down with the flu and recovered in time, however, to attend the Academy Awards ceremony with Powell. And so she was not well. Even though she recovered, she was not well. Something was pretty wrong with her, and I don't think that she was getting the right diagnosis. Listen on. So while Jean began to film for her final movie, Saratoga, in which Clark Gable co-starred, it was actually scheduled to begin filming in March of that year, 1937. So what happened was production was delayed when she developed sepsis after multiple wisdom tooth extractions. And so she had to be hospitalized. And so almost 2 months later, Jean Harlow recovered and shooting resumed on April the 22nd, 1937, a day after my father's birthday. Um, anyway, so she actually appeared on the cover of Life. And so uh, I guess she was okay at that point. In May 1937, while filming, she again grew ill with the symptoms of fatigue, nausea, fluid retention, and abdominal pain. But it was not serious to the studio doctor, obviously, um, or he would have probably hospitalized her. And he just thought that she came down with the flu again. And so the doctor, however, was not aware that Jean had been ill with a severe sunburn. Oh, and the flu during the previous year. So her friend and co-star, Una Merkel, um, uh, noticed that Jean's weight was being, she was putting on weight. And it was not weight, though, guys. It was fluid retention. And I suspect that it is likely she may have been on medication and, consuming alcohol, and it must have done something to her. And Una also noticed that Jean's complexion was very gray and sallow, and she was very tired and weary, and so she was not herself. Jean was definitely not well. And so at the end of May, while Jean was filming a scene in which her character had a fever, she was clearly sicker than her character was, and she leaned against Clark Gable between takes, and she said to him, "I'm feeling so terrible. You need to help me get me back to my dressing room." And so she requested that the assistant director phone William Powell, who immediately left his own movie set in order to take her back home. So I guess they had a thing going by then. And so Powell took her home. And so, guys, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop right here because this is where it starts falling apart. She basically never regains her health, but we're going to continue with another part next time. And so this concludes part 4 of the story of Jean Harlow and her fascinating life and times. And I hope that you have enjoyed watching. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now. It's probably still filming.